All right, let's get right into it, because today we're going to flip a story you think you know completely on its head. We're talking about the giants of industry, the Goliaths. The conventional wisdom is that they're toast, right? Well, it turns out they're not just surviving, they're learning how to fight back and win.
You know this story? I mean, we've all heard it 1,000 times, right? It's the classic tale. Some small, scrappy startup pops up out of nowhere and just completely demolishes a huge established industry.
And this is the matchup we always picture in our heads. In one corner, you've got David, super agile, lightning fast, a total disruptor. And in the other corner, Goliath, the big, slow, lumbering incumbent. For a long time, all the smart money was on David, no question.
Yeah, this whole idea has basically become the foundational myth of modern business, hasn't it? We've gotten to the point where we just expect the underdog to win. But what if that myth is starting to show some serious cracks?
And that brings us to the big question, the one that changes everything. What if the giants, what if they've stopped tripping over their own feet and have actually started to learn the disruptor's own game?
Because that's pretty much where we're at right now. There's this whole new reality taking shape, and in this reality, the Goliaths aren't just sitting back and defending their turf anymore. Oh no, they're planning a full-blown revenge.
Okay, to really see what I'm talking about, let's play a little game. I'm going to show you a list of achievements, and I want you to guess what company we're talking about. You ready? Let's do it.
So think about this profile. This company was an early investor in a huge ride-sharing company, Lyft. They're licensed to test more self-driving cars in California than anyone. They were the first to deliver an affordable, long-range electric car, beating Tesla to the punch. And they dropped over $1 billion to buy a Silicon Valley autonomous driving startup. So who comes to mind? Google, Apple, maybe even Tesla, right?
Nope, it's General Motors. Yeah, that General Motors. The 100-plus-year-old car company that just over a decade ago needed a government bailout to survive. This is like Exhibit A that the story is fundamentally changing. The Goliaths are learning to adapt.
And honestly, they have to adapt. There's no choice, because the entire competitive landscape has been completely redrawn. I mean, GM CEO Mary Barra even said they're seeing more change in the next 5 years than we've seen in the last 50. So just standing still, that is absolutely not an option anymore.
So what does this new world even look like? Well, you can think of it as a world where the rewards for innovation aren't spread out evenly at all, not even close. It's a world where a tiny number of players end up grabbing almost everything.
And this leads to a pretty harsh reality. In what we call a winner-takes-most market, being just average is basically a death sentence. A couple of companies at the very top capture this massive share of the value, and everybody else, well, they're left fighting over the scraps.
I mean, just look at e-commerce for a perfect, almost scary example. Back in 2018, Amazon controlled nearly half of the entire US market. Just let that sink in for a second. Their revenue was almost the same as every other online retailer in the US combined. That right there is winner takes most in action.
Okay, and the second big force pushing all this change is something called the customer expectation ratchet. Think of a ratchet wrench. It only turns one way, right? It's the same idea. Once a company like Tesla rolls out an over-the-air software update that literally makes your car faster overnight, well, that's the new baseline. That's what people expect now. Customers never, ever go backwards. Their expectations only ratchet up. So, with all this crazy pressure, you gotta ask, how on earth can these established giants even compete? Well, it starts by changing how they see themselves. They have to stop looking at their history and their size as baggage, and start seeing those things for what they really are, hidden strengths.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because this is where the Goliaths actually have a secret weapon. They possess a whole set of what you could call their crown jewels. These are assets that a startup would absolutely kill to have. Just take a look at this list. I mean, some of these are pretty obvious, right? Brand reach, existing customers, huge amounts of data. But think about something like self-funding innovation. That's the ability to use the profits from your main stable business to just pay for new, crazy ideas without having to go beg venture capitalists for money. Startups have to build every single one of these things from scratch. The incumbents, they've already got them.
But, and this is a huge but, here's the catch. Having all those crown jewels doesn't mean a thing if you don't have a new strategy for how to use them. You just can't play this new game with the old rulebook. You need a whole new playbook.
So, let's talk about that playbook. Let's see how these companies can actually start fighting back. We're going to break down the 6 new rules that these established players can use to completely turn the tables and get their revenge.
All right, so this new playbook, it's built around 6 key rules, and they cover everything from using your data like it's cash to valuing talented people more than fancy tech. But it all, and I mean all of it, starts with rule number 1, which is the absolute foundation: deliver 10x customer outcomes. We're going to focus on this one for a second because frankly, if you don't get this right, none of the other rules even matter.
And this quote right here, it really says it all. The days of just making small, incremental improvements are gone. Being just a little bit better than you were last year, that is not going to cut it anymore. Not in this winner-takes-most world.
The new goal, the new benchmark, is to deliver what's called a 10x customer outcome. That means creating something that isn't just a little better, but is 10 times better than what everyone else is doing. We're talking about a leap in value so massive that your customers find it literally irresistible to switch. The best example? Think about the first iPhone compared to a Nokia brick phone. That is 10x.
And when you start thinking like that, it forces this fundamental shift in your whole mindset. You move away from that defensive crouch, away from just trying to survive the next big wave of disruption that's coming for you.
And you finally go on the offense. It's all about taking those crown jewels we talked about, using this new playbook, and becoming the disruptor yourself.
So the big takeaway here is pretty clear. The game has completely changed. That old familiar story of David versus Goliath, it's not a sure thing anymore. Which really just leaves one final question for you to think about. In this brand new landscape, is your company just playing defense, or is it planning its revenge?